Okay, so today we're going to talk about bindings. Everybody's favorite thing to do. I cannot tell you how many people come into the shop and say, I hate to do bindings. You got somebody who will do bindings. We have a couple of gals here that do bindings, and they do a nice job. Gabe barters for his bindings. He quilts Martha's quilts, and Martha does his bindings because Mom doesn't have time. Anyway, there are several ways of doing your bindings. When we get done with a project and we've spent weeks and hours and days and sometimes years doing a quilt, we get to the binding and we rush through it because we just want it to be done. But your binding is your final framework of your project. It doesn't matter if it's a wall hanging. It doesn't matter if it's a placemat. It's just the final end of the quilt. I can't
it's
think
the
of
icing on the cake.
There you go. There you go. It's the icing on the cake. And sometimes all you need is the proper tools and the technique to be able to get a really nice binding. So I just pulled this quilt this morning. I just wanted to show you how nice and mitered and even the binding corners are. I probably shouldn't have shown it in black, but you can see back and front how nice and even and mitered those corners are. And it just squares it up. They're not rounded, they're not pulling, and they're not puckered. I don't mind. I like doing bindings. To me, it's the icing on the cake. So you have to have some tools. There's a lot of different ways of doing your bindings. So basic tools would be the miter, Perfect Binding Miter. It's just a simple little piece of plastic that has corners cut into it. And mine is so old now. Mine was done when it was in Escanaba. So we were able to find the person who bought the rights to it, and we have them ordered. Now, we have plenty in the shop. They're available online, Gabe?
Yes.
Okay. So that's one of the things I'm going to show you today that really makes a difference. Putting your bindings on so they're even. You can use the acorn glue. You can use Annie's basting tape. You can use a wash away, or you can just use binder clips. And you can never have too many binding clips. So that being said, I'm going to put these aside for right now and show you some other things. First of all, I cut my binding 2.5 inches. Some people cut their bindings 2 1/4 because they don't want to have a lot of binding on the back. So I have a friend who is an award-winning quilter, and she would enter her quilts into all these competitions and nobody would take them, but they wouldn't tell her why. And so finally, on one of her entries, the judges came back with, it's your bindings. Her bindings were not mitered nicely on the corner. The other thing, when your binding has to go all the way to the edge. So for instance, on this piece, I just want to show you that if this is a 1/4 inch seam, so if I turn this over and bring it all the way, you need to have your binding go all the way to the quilt. So if you bring it to just your stitching line, you have all of this gap in here where there's no quilt. They judge you on that. So your binding has got to go all the way where your quilt is meeting the edge. So this is what I'm saying. Some people don't like to do that and have their binding on the front and then have all this binding on the back. My binding, I don't do a 1/4 inch. I do a little under 3/8. You can, I tried to do a different color there, but when I turn my binding to the back now, it's just going to miss my stitches. So those of you who like to do handwork, this is the perfect width for you. It actually sews down beautifully. I can just have my folded edge, just kiss the stitching line, and I'm good to go. For those of you who like to stitch in the ditch from the front, you have to be a little more careful because you could miss the back. So this goes just beyond a little bit. Can you see the pin in there? It's just kissing the back. So if you wanted to hand stitch these or wanted to machine stitch this by stitching in the ditch, you could do that on this one and it would just miss the stitching line. But I got ahead of myself. I wanted to show you making the binding. So most of your binding is cut from selvage to fold. That's cross grain. We don't hardly ever cut our bindings straight of grain. If you have enough leftover fabrics from when it's quilted and you want to cut it straight of grain, that's fine. There's no reason why you can't. But most people just cut it across the width of their fabric and then they stitch all their lengths together. So when you do that, you have hardly any stretch in your binding. If you cut a bias binding, which we have done previously, you're going to have stretch. Does that show up good, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just like a t-shirt knit. This one, you have a little bit, but not near that. Same pressure. I cut mine 2.5, and then I have this wonderful tool. It's called the third hand binding holder clip. Let me just show you. It's adjustable. You have the fold in here. So your binding's going to go in here. Let's just show this. And of course my hands are shaking now, so it doesn't want to go in for me. There we go. So, and then you just feed it through. It comes out folded for you. All right, this is one really cool thing. It clamps on your table like this. You bring the bottom up. That's a hex nut. Make sure that it's nice and firm. I'm not up high enough. Hang on.
Nut.
Wing nut?
Wing nut.
Wing nut. Yeah, I'm a wingy ding. There you go. Don't say it. I'm your mom. All right. And then here is the silicone pressing mat. We sold these a long time ago. Well, last winter.
Last winter.
Because we got them at market and we had trouble getting them back in. Well, now our distributor is carrying them, so we can get them back in. This is Leanna's favorite tool. She loves the pressing mat for her bindings. So you've cut your binding, you're feeding it through. Let's just do this. You're going to bring it up. You're going to bring it through the little groove, the belt loop. It's a belt loop. Belt loop on your mat. And I'm going to bring it through. Make sure your edges are together when you get it this far. Actually, I think I have it backwards. It should be on that edge. So anyway, we're going to do this then. I don't want as much heat on this because the silicone gets really hot. So I'm just going to lay this there. Here, let me just give it a little start. I'm just going to lay this on there. And I'm just going to, now my mole mat's moving on me. I'm just going to start pulling it through, making sure you're lined up. How long do we stand at our iron, folding our binding, and I got off on the very end. We stand and we fold and we iron. It unfolded there at the end. Don't do it on the mat. That's really gives you the crease. By putting it on there, there's something in the heat. Look how crisp that is. It's a great binding. So, but this gets hot. That's really hot. So be careful. This gets hot, but it really makes a nice crisp edge on your bindings. So this is an awesome tool. We are getting more in. It'll be a week or two.
Yep.
And then we're going to do a combo pack on this and the wing, but we don't know yet what, because we can't get the colors of the third hand to match the silicone mats because they're from two different companies. But we love these two in conjunction with each other, so we're going to put together a combo kit for you. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here. Now, everyone really wanted to know curved binding. Everyone wanted to know on your, so I just did some circles. I just did some circles last night to put together to show you. So you're going to start putting your binding on your circle just like normal. So I always leave a tail because I have to join them. So when you're sewing your binding on your circle, you want to make sure your foot is feeding and you're going around the circle. You do not want to stretch this. This is even a little too stretchy here. And as it's going around, you're just going to gently lay this on your circle and you're going to keep sewing. You're going to use your, I use my knee lift and I lift and turn all the time. It does go very quickly. That's all there is to putting your stretchy binding on. If you stretch this too taut and it's like this, when you go to flip it over, this is going to curl. It even mine now, when I go to flip this to the back, oh, look how nice and even that is. When I go to flip this to the back, it still wants to not, it's laying flat, but look at that. Look how it's just folded in. That's because it's the bias. It just folded in beautifully. Now, I'm going to hand sew this because on my curved curves, it's a little too hard for me to make sure that I'm beyond my stitching line. Oh, you could do it. You could do it. You could just kiss the edge of your fold and you could get it to lay down. Okay, so how do we finish these? That was the main question. How do we get these to join?
With doing the curve, you only use bias, right? You don't use a regular.
You cannot. You can. When you're doing curves, you have to use bias. Even on your scalloped edges, you should be using bias. Scalloped edges aren't near as, this is a really tight curve. I did this on purpose to show a really tight dinner plate curve. But when you're doing any kind of curves like that, you have to use the bias to get it to lay flat. If I try to do my straight binding on a curve, I should have thought of that. Let's just see. This is the straight binding, and it'll all gather here. It won't, when you turn it to the back, you're going to have pleats. There is no way that you can get away with that. So you have to use bias to get that nice, even, rounded curve. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Okay. So when you're doing, let me show you on this one first. When you're doing regular binding and you get to the end of your quilt and you want to join your two strips, there are all kinds of ways. People fold it down and then sew over the edges like this. And then they just kind of tack that in. I sew my bindings together and it's so easy. So I use my shop ruler all the time. I used everybody else's shop ruler until we got our own. So I'm going to go in here anywhere towards the edge. I'm going to actually draw a line, and I didn't bring a marking pencil, so we'll just do a pen because it's just a sample. And I'm just going to figure out how much I need. I have plenty here, so I'm just going to cut this tail off. So I'm just going to cut this off. Let me get my scissors. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap these edges, whatever width I cut my binding. General rule, if you cut your binding 2 1/4, you're going to overlap these 2 1/4. If you cut them 2 1/2, you're going to overlap them 2 1/2. If you cut them 2, you're going to overlap them 2. So what I like to do is leave this here on the edge. I bring this nice and even down here. I'm going to, actually what I do, I'll just show you what I do at home. So I've got it like this. I'm going to fold it back on itself. I'm just going to fold it back on itself. Make sure that it is even. You don't want any extra ease in there. So there's my fold. Snip it off. You're going to open these up. I should have a bigger piece for you. And you're going to put them right sides together. So you can actually fold this. So you're going to open these up. Make sure you don't twist it. Put right sides together. This is where your glue will come in real handy. Your binding clips. Let me just use my clips. So then you're going to draw a line. It looks a little awkward because it's such a small piece, but if I had left some of this open, here, let me just open it up a little more so you can see how flat it will lay. Oh, nice sharp scissors, Renee. Here. So now you have your piece that's laying perfectly flat. You need to sew your corner from here to here. You sew that corner from there to there. Let's get some pins here. If you sew your corner to corner, then always double check before you sew to make sure you haven't twisted your pieces. So what's going to happen now is you've made your miter. You've made your miter and it will look like this. So I've sewn my two pieces together. I've sewn from corner to corner. Then you can open them up. I will trim them off and fold right sides together. And that's how you join your end pieces. So basically what it is, you overlap your two ends, the exact width of your binding. Trim it off, make sure that they're square, sew corner to corner. You can actually draw a line if you want. I prefer to do that. I would draw a line. I have a special plate on my machine that has the lines on it, so I don't have to do that. But that's all there is to joining your ends. Okay, so I want to show you something else before we get there. So it's the same thing on here. When we overlap this, now this is a little trickier because you're working with a curve, but it doesn't matter. You need to find your 2.5. I usually like to use my clips on here until I have it the width that I need it. So I'm going to mark this one. No, that's in the way. I'm going to just mark this one. And I already did last night. There's a little mark right there. That's my 2.5. So I'm going to gently bring this around so that it's there. I'm going to fold it back on itself so I have a nice even edge. And I'm going to cut that off. And by the way, this is the bias that we made on the AccuQuilt, the one that I screwed up the first time and did it right the second time. So now the top one opens up, the bottom one opens up. You make sure that they are laying flat together like this. I left a little bit bigger opening like this. When you go to your machine to sew, you're going to just fold your pot holder or your product up out of the way, and you're going to sew corner to corner. You're just going to sew corner to corner. Then you can trim that off when it's done. And always make sure before you sew that these are right sides together, that this doesn't get twisted. I can't tell you how many times I've twisted it going this way or that way. Then once you have them sewn, I am going to, and this is where I like my Acorn Precision Piecing Spray, because I'm going to flatten that seam out in there really, really nice. But I'm just going to finger press today. Then you're going to fold your edges together, and look how nicely that frames it in. It's just going to kiss your edges just like you want it to. It takes a little finessing. That's a good word. It takes a little finessing to get this to work nicely with your with your bias. But now it's ready to be sewn. It's not stretched on the edges. And when you go to turn this to the back, it's going to lay nice and even. See, and it's the stretch and the bias that is letting that hug the curved edges. If you have any questions, just post them. I'll try and get to them. I may not get them to them until tonight, because if we're busy today, like we've been all week, it'll take me till tonight, but I will answer all your questions. I'll leave these in the shop, so if you're coming in and want to see, we can show you in person. So let's talk about the mitered. We started with that, but let's talk about the mitered corners. So when you are mitering your corners, everyone says, well, I just do the fold back method. Well, that's fine. But if you just do the fold back method and you don't sew it down, if you don't sew it down, it won't form the perfect miter on both sides. So what I do is, this is backwards. So I don't know if I turn it around, would it look different for you?
I don't know.
All right. So you have this on your sewing machine. You have the bed of your sewing machine in front of you. You're going to lay your tool in the corner of your quilt so that it's perfectly squared. This is going to, your whole binding piece is trailing down. You have this perfectly in the corner. Now, I'll be honest with you. You have 3/8, you have quarter, you have a 1/2 inch. I always use the 1/2 inch. It is because it's visual. It doesn't matter what seam allowance is, but I can see this with my walking foot. So as I'm sewing down now, that becomes very predominant. You put your needle in the down position, you pivot on your machine, and you stitch right on off. Then you're going to continue to fold your binding back like you normally would, making sure you have your nice 45 there. You're going to make sure that this is on your edge, and you're going to fold it forward. You're going to then continue to sew all the way around until you have all of your corners done. Now, I've already done these, but look, when I go to flip them, look at that beautiful binding. Look at the miter is right there, and I'm just going to fold it. I'm not even going to turn it and look. Look at the miter on the back. It is going to press in beautifully for you every time. Do it again. There's your miter on the front. I'm not even going to look. There's your miter on the back. It's awesome. Okay. We are running a little behind. I love showing people bindings. I'm leaving these in the store just to show you how to do them. It's just a little bit of patience. It takes a little bit of time, but picture the binding on your quilt as the framework on a piece of art. That's all I can say. It is really, really important. All right, everyone.
Happy quilting.
Happy quilting. Bye-bye.